The blood-curdling scream that tore through the stillness of the Montana morning sent flocks of startled birds scattering across the vast blue sky as Jessica Collins plummeted from the rickety bridge into the dry creek bed below. The year was 1885, and the bride of less than an hour lay in a heap of white satin and lace, the dust of the parched earth soiling her wedding gown, tears streaming down her dirt-smudged face. "John, how could you?" She cried out, staring up at the bridge where her new husband stood alongside his companion, both men laughing callously at her predicament. "Nothing personal, darling," John Winters called down, his voice dripping with contempt. "But your father's ranch is worth more to me than you are. And once you're gone as your husband, it all comes to me." Jessica's blood ran cold. The marriage had been arranged by her father, a wealthy rancher who had recently fallen ill. John had seemed charming, attentive, the perfect suitor. Now she realized it had all been a ruse to gain control of the Collins property, one of the largest cattle operations in the territory. "You'll never get away with this," she shouted, struggling to stand despite the sharp pain shooting through her ankle. "Who's going to stop me?" John sneered. "Your pa's bedridden, and everyone in town saw us happily married this morning. When I tell them how my poor bride wandered off and fell to her death, they'll believe every word." He turned to his companion. "Finish her, Roy. I'll be waiting at the ranch to play the grieving husband." Jessica scrambled backward as Roy clambered down the embankment, drawing his pistol with a menacing grin. Her heart hammered in her chest, her wedding veil tangled around her shoulders, her thoughts racing with the horror of her situation. 20 years old and about to die at the hands of the man she had just vowed to spend her life with. A gunshot cracked through the air, and Jessica flinched, certain her last moment had come. Instead, she saw Roy clutch his shoulder, blood seeping through his fingers as he crumpled to the ground. "I suggest you reconsider your plans," a deep voice rumbled from behind her. Jessica twisted around to see a tall, broad-shouldered man astride a magnificent chestnut stallion. His face was partially shaded by a wide-brimmed hat, but she could make out the stern set of his jaw beneath several days' worth of stubble. A Winchester rifle rested confidently in his hands, still smoking from the shot. John drew his own weapon, but before he could aim, another shot rang out, sending his gun flying from his grasp. "Next one goes between your eyes," the stranger called up. "Ride out now and don't come back." With a stream of curses, John hauled his injured companion onto his horse and galloped away, dust billowing behind them. The stranger dismounted in one fluid motion and approached Jessica, holstering his weapon. As he drew closer, she could see he was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps 25 or 26, with intense blue eyes that assessed her with concern. "Are you hurt, madam?" he asked, crouching beside her. "My ankle," she admitted, wincing as she tried to move it. "I think I twisted it in the fall." Without hesitation, he scooped her into his arms as if she weighed nothing at all, her wedding dress billowing around them. The sudden proximity to his solid chest made her breath catch. "You're safe now," he said, his voice softer than before. As he lifted her from the creek bed, a small smile touched the corner of his mouth. "You're mine to protect until we get you home, miss." "Mrs. Winters," she replied automatically, then shuddered at the name. "No, Jessica Collins. The marriage was a sham. He only wanted my father's ranch." Her voice broke on the last word. "Beau Evans," he introduced himself, carrying her effortlessly to his horse. "I've got a cabin not far from here. We can tend to that ankle before figuring out what to do about your husband." "Ex-husband," Jessica corrected firmly. "As soon as possible." Beau's cabin was small but meticulously kept, nestled in a grove of pines with a stream running nearby. Inside, worn but clean furnishings spoke of a solitary life lived with care. He settled Jessica on a rough-hewn chair, propping her injured foot on a stool before retrieving a basin of cool water and clean cloths. "This might hurt a bit," he warned, kneeling before her and gently removing her dirt-caked satin shoe. His calloused fingers were surprisingly tender as he examined her swollen ankle. "Doesn't seem broken, just a bad sprain. You're lucky." Jessica gave a hollow laugh. "Lucky isn't exactly how I describe my wedding day." Beau's eyes met hers, and something in their depths made her heart flutter unexpectedly. "No, I reckon not," he agreed quietly. "Mind telling me how a beautiful bride ended up being pushed into a creek bed by her new husband?" As he wrapped her ankle with practiced efficiency, Jessica explained about her father's illness, John's whirlwind courtship, and the hasty wedding arranged at John's insistence. "Pa was too sick to attend," she said, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief Beau had provided. "He trusted John would take care of me and the ranch. Instead, I discovered he planned to take care of me permanently." "Some men don't deserve the air they breathe," Beau muttered, securing the bandage. "Your father's the Collins of Willow Creek Ranch," Jessica nodded, surprised. "You know of it." "Everyone in these parts knows of Willow Creek, finest cattle ranch in the territory." He stood, towering over her. "I need to ask, Miss Collins, do you have anyone else you trust? Anyone who can help you and your father against John Winters?" She shook her head sadly. "Pa's foreman, Mr. Daniels, has been loyal for years, but he's getting on in age. Most of the hands were hired by John over the past few months." Her eyes widened with sudden realization. "They're probably his men," Beau nodded grimly, "which means going back there right now would be walking into a hornet's nest." "But I can't abandon my father," Jessica protested, attempting to stand before wincing in pain. Strong hands steadied her shoulders. "Easy now. I'm not suggesting abandoning anyone, but we need a plan, not a suicide mission." As dusk fell, Beau prepared a simple meal of beans, cornbread, and coffee. Jessica had changed out of her ruined wedding dress into an oversized shirt and trousers Beau had lent her, the sleeves rolled up several times. Despite the dire circumstances, she found herself drawn to the quiet competence of this mysterious cowboy who had saved her life. "How did you happen to be there today?" she asked as they ate by lamplight. "At the creek, I mean." Beau's expression grew guarded. "I patrol that area regularly. It borders the land I'm tending." "You're a rancher." "Not exactly." He took a sip of coffee. "I work for someone who is." Jessica sensed there was more to the story but didn't press. "Well, whoever you work for is fortunate to have you. You saved my life today, Mr. Evans." "Beau," he corrected with a small smile, "and anyone would have done the same." "No," Jessica said softly. "They wouldn't have." Their eyes locked across the table, and for a moment Jessica forgot about her throbbing ankle and the danger that awaited her. There was something about Beau Evans that made her feel safe for the first time since her father had fallen ill. The moment was broken by the distant sound of hoofbeats. Beau was on his feet instantly, extinguishing the lamp and drawing his gun. "Stay here," he whispered, moving silently to the window. Jessica's heart pounded as she listened to the approaching riders. Had John found them already? Beau relaxed slightly. "It's Liam," he said, "my boss's son." Moments later, a tall young man with sandy hair burst through the door. "Beau, we've got trouble. John Winters is at the main house claiming his bride has been kidnapped by—" He stopped short at the sight of Jessica. "I'm guessing you're the bride." Beau quickly made introductions. "Jessica Collins, this is Liam Montgomery. His father owns the Triple M Ranch neighboring your father's property." "Miss Collins," Liam acknowledged with a respectful nod. "Winters has half the county stirred up. Says you were abducted by a dangerous outlaw after your wedding ceremony. He's organizing a search party." Jessica's face flushed with anger. "He's the dangerous one. He tried to kill me." "I figured it was something like that," Liam said. "Pa never trusted Winters, said he had shifty eyes." "Your father is a good judge of character," Jessica remarked. "He sent me to warn Beau." Winters specifically described someone matching his description as the kidnapper. Beau's expression hardened. "He saw me clearly enough." "Why would he target you specifically?" Jessica asked, confused. The two men exchanged a glance that spoke volumes. "There's history between us," Beau admitted reluctantly. "Winters and I have crossed paths before." "You're not just a ranch hand, are you?" Jessica asked, suddenly certain. Beau sighed. "No, madam, I was a U.S. Marshal until 6 months ago. John Winters was involved in a cattle rustling operation I broke up in Colorado. Several of his associates went to prison, but he slipped away. I've been tracking him since." Jessica stared at him, processing this revelation. "So when you said you patrol the area?" "I've been watching Winters, gathering evidence. I knew he was up to something when he started courting the daughter of one of the wealthiest ranchers in the territory, but I didn't expect him to move so quickly to murder. Or so clumsily," Liam added. "Pushing her off a bridge in broad daylight isn't exactly subtle." "He didn't expect witnesses," Beau said grimly, "and he didn't expect me to be there." Jessica's mind was reeling. "So what do we do now? We get you to safety, then deal with Winters," Beau replied. "Liam, can your father shelter Miss Collins?" Liam nodded. "Pa already suggested it. Our ranch house is well staffed with men loyal to the family. Winters wouldn't dare make a move there." "And my father," Jessica pressed anxiously. "One problem at a time," Beau counseled. "First, we secure your safety. Then we figure out how to help your father without tipping our hand to Winters." Despite her protests, Jessica knew Beau was right. With her ankle injured and John's men likely watching her father's ranch, she needed time to recover and plan. Still, the thought of leaving her father in danger gnawed at her. They departed under cover of darkness, with Jessica riding double with Beau. The proximity was unavoidable, but Jessica couldn't deny the comfort she found in the solid warmth of his chest against her back, his arms securely around her as he held the reins. "Thank you," she said softly as they rode through the moonlit landscape. "For everything." His reply was a gentle tightening of his arms, a silent promise of protection that spoke louder than words. The Montgomery ranch house was impressive, a 2-story structure of sturdy logs with a wide veranda and glass windows, unusual luxuries for the frontier. Inside, Jessica was welcomed by Liam's parents, Margaret and Thomas Montgomery, who expressed outrage at her treatment and immediate concern for her well-being. "That scoundrel came here bold as brass," Thomas fumed, pacing the parlor. "Spinning tales about his bride being kidnapped, as if I'd believe a word from his lying mouth." "You knew he was lying?" Jessica asked, settled comfortably on a sofa with her injured ankle elevated. "I've been in these parts for 30 years, Miss Collins. I know a snake when I see one." The older man's eyes softened. "Your father and I go way back. James Collins is the finest man I know. When he announced your engagement to Winters, I tried to warn him, but he was already too ill to receive visitors." Margaret Montgomery, a dignified woman with kind eyes, patted Jessica's hand. "You'll stay here as long as needed, dear. No harm will come to you under our roof." "I'm grateful," Jessica said sincerely, "but I can't stop worrying about my father. If John realizes I'm alive and hiding, he might take his anger out on Pa." "Which is why we need to move quickly," Beau interjected. "Liam, can you ride to town tomorrow and send a telegram to Marshal Donovan in Denver? He needs to know Winters has surfaced." As the men discussed strategy, Jessica found her gaze continually drawn to Beau. In the warm lamplight of the Montgomery home, she noticed details she'd missed before: a small scar above his right eyebrow, the way his dark hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck, the thoughtful intelligence behind his intense blue eyes. When their gazes met across the room, something electric passed between them, causing heat to rise in her cheeks. She quickly looked away, confused by her reaction. Her wedding day had nearly become her death day, yet here she was, inexplicably drawn to a man she'd just met. Perhaps it was merely gratitude, she reasoned, or the natural admiration one might feel for a rescuer. But as the evening progressed, and she observed Beau's respectful interactions with the Montgomerys, his careful attention to every detail of their plan, and the gentle concern in his eyes whenever they fell on her injured ankle, Jessica knew it was more than simple gratitude stirring in her heart. The next morning brought news that increased their urgency. One of the Montgomery ranch hands had returned from town with troubling information. John Winters had been appointed temporary manager of the Collins Ranch by the town judge, claiming Jessica had abandoned her husband and father. "That's preposterous," Jessica exclaimed, nearly spilling her breakfast tea. "Judge Parker would never approve such a thing." "Judge Parker is visiting his daughter in St. Louis," Thomas Montgomery explained grimly. "Judge Wilson is presiding in his absence." "Wilson's new to these parts," Beau added, "and rumor has it he's not above taking bribes." Jessica set down her cup with shaking hands. "Then John has legal control of everything: the ranch, the cattle, even my father's care." Her voice broke. "We have to do something." "And we will," Beau assured her, his steady gaze anchoring her against rising panic. "But we need to be smart about this. Winters doesn't know you're alive, which gives us an advantage." "What if," Jessica began, then hesitated, an idea forming, "what if we use that? Let him think he's won, then catch him in his own trap." Beau's eyes lit with appreciation. "What do you have in mind?" By midday, their plan was taking shape. Jessica would remain hidden at the Montgomery Ranch while Beau, posing as a drifting cowhand looking for work, would infiltrate the Collins Ranch to assess the situation and ensure her father's safety. "It's too dangerous," Jessica protested when Beau prepared to leave. "John might recognize you." "I'll be careful," he promised, checking his weapons before securing them in his saddlebags. "Besides, Winters only saw me briefly, and I'll look different enough to pass inspection." Indeed, he had transformed himself clean-shaven now, with his hair trimmed and wearing borrowed clothes that gave him the appearance of a down on his luck cowboy rather than a former lawman. "Still," Jessica insisted, following him to the stables despite her bandaged ankle, "if anything happens to you because of me." Beau turned to her, his expression softening. "Jessica, I've been tracking Winters for months. This isn't just about you, though I won't deny you've given me extra motivation." His hand reached out to touch her cheek briefly. "I'll come back, that's a promise." The gentle touch lingered on her skin long after he'd ridden away. Jessica found herself standing in the stable doorway, watching until his figure disappeared over the horizon, her heart torn between fear for his safety and a growing warmth whenever she thought of him. "He's a good man," Margaret Montgomery said, appearing beside her. "One of the best I've known." Jessica nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. "Come inside, dear," the older woman urged gently. "Worrying won't bring him back faster, and you need to rest that ankle if you're going to be ready when the time comes." The days that followed were among the most difficult of Jessica's life. She alternated between anxious pacing, as much as her healing ankle allowed, and sitting by the window, scanning the horizon for any sign of Beau's return. To occupy her mind, she helped Margaret with household tasks and spent hours discussing ranching operations with Thomas, whose knowledge and experience reminded her of her father. On the fourth day, as dusk was falling, a rider approached the Montgomery Ranch at a gallop. Jessica rushed to the window, her heart leaping, but it was Liam, not Beau, who dismounted in the yard. "News from town," he announced as he entered the house. "The telegram reached Denver. Marshal Donovan is sending a detachment, but they won't arrive for at least 3 days. Any word from Beau?" Jessica asked anxiously. Liam's expression was grim. "He managed to get hired at your ranch, but the situation is worse than we thought. Your father's condition has deteriorated. Winters has isolated him, claiming the doctor ordered complete rest with no visitors. Only Winters and a nurse he hired are allowed in your father's room." Jessica's blood ran cold. "He's killing him," she whispered. "Slowly poisoning him, I'd wager. We can't wait 3 days for the marshals." Beau said the same, Liam confirmed. "He's arranged for us to meet him tonight at Cottonwood Creek. He has a plan, but he needs our help." Thomas Montgomery, who had been listening silently, stood with determination. "Then he shall have it. Liam, gather the men. We ride at nightfall." Despite protests from both Montgomery men, Jessica insisted on joining them. "It's my father and my ranch," she stated firmly. I won't be left behind while others risk themselves for my family. The rendezvous point was a secluded bend in Cottonwood Creek, hidden from view by a dense stand of trees. Beau was already waiting when they arrived, his face showing signs of exhaustion but brightening visibly when he spotted Jessica among the riders. "You shouldn't be here," were his first words to her, though his eyes conveyed a different message. "Try to stop me," she challenged with a smile that belied her anxiety. Beau shook his head, but the corner of his mouth twitched upward. "Stubborn woman," he murmured before turning to address the group. "Winters has 8 men at the ranch, all armed and loyal to him," he reported. "They're expecting trouble, but not tonight. They believe Jessica is dead and I'm just a drifter grateful for work." "What about my father?" Jessica asked, dreading the answer. Beau's expression softened with compassion. "He's being drugged, Jessica. I managed to get a look at what the nurse is giving him, laudanum, far more than necessary for pain. He's barely conscious most of the time." Tears sprang to Jessica's eyes, but she blinked them back. "Then we move tonight." "That's the plan," Beau agreed. "I've arranged to take the midnight watch. I'll open the south gate for you. Thomas and his men will create a diversion at the main entrance while Liam, Jessica, and I get to James Collins." "And Winters?" Thomas Montgomery asked. Beau's expression hardened. "Leave him to me." The plan was set in motion just after midnight. Jessica's heart hammered as she rode beside Liam toward the ranch that had been her home since birth, now feeling strangely foreign and threatening under John Winters' control. They approached silently from the south, as planned, finding Beau waiting at the gate. "Any changes?" Liam whispered as they dismounted. Beau shook his head. "All quiet. The diversion should start any minute." On cue, shouts and gunfire erupted from the main entrance, drawing Winters' men to the commotion. Beau led Jessica and Liam swiftly through the shadows toward the main house, avoiding the few guards who remained at their posts. "Pa's room is upstairs, first door on the right," Jessica whispered as they slipped through the kitchen entrance. The house was eerily quiet, most of the hands having rushed to defend against the supposed attack. They climbed the stairs cautiously, Beau leading with his gun drawn. At the top, he signaled for them to wait while he checked the hallway. "Clear," he murmured after a moment. Jessica rushed to her father's door, only to find it locked. "Pa," she called softly, pressing her ear to the wood. No response came from within. "Stand back," Beau instructed, then rammed his shoulder against the door. It gave way with a splintering crack. Inside, the room was dimly lit by a single lamp. James Collins lay motionless in his bed, his face ashen, while a woman in a nurse's uniform rose from a chair with a startled cry. "What is the meaning of?" she began, but Liam was already restraining her, clapping a hand over her mouth. Jessica flew to her father's side. Pa, can you hear me?" She took his limp hand, alarmed at how thin and frail he had become in the weeks since she'd last seen him. James Collins' eyelids fluttered. "Jessie," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Is that really you, girl?" "Yes, Pa, it's me," she choked out, tears streaming down her face. "I've come to take you home." "But this is home," a cold voice interrupted from the doorway. Jessica whirled to find John Winters standing there, a pistol aimed steadily at her head. Behind him, 2 of his men blocked the exit. "I must say, you're remarkably resilient, dear wife," John said with a sneer. "Most brides would have the decency to die when pushed off a bridge." "Sorry to disappoint you," Jessica replied, straightening her spine, "but I'm not most brides." John's gaze shifted to Beau, narrowing in recognition. "And you, the interfering lawman who couldn't mind his own business. 2 birds with 1 stone, how convenient." "It's over, Winters," Beau stated calmly, though Jessica could see the tension in his stance. "The Marshals are on their way. Even if you kill us all, you won't escape justice this time." John laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "By the time any Marshals arrive, you'll all be dead in an unfortunate accident. Such a tragedy the Collins family and their friends caught in a house fire." Jessica felt her blood run cold at the calculated madness in his eyes. This man had never loved her, had never even seen her as a person, just an obstacle to be removed on his path to wealth. "You won't get away with this," she said, moving to shield her father with her body. "I already have," John replied, cocking his pistol. Several things happened simultaneously. Beau lunged toward John as Liam shoved the nurse aside and drew his own weapon. Gunfire erupted in the confined space, deafening in its intensity. Jessica threw herself over her father as bullets splintered the bedpost inches from her head. When she dared to look up, John was on the floor, clutching his bleeding shoulder, his gun kicked away. Beau stood over him, his own weapon trained steadily on John's forehead. "Give me one reason not to end you right now," Beau growled, his voice dangerously low. "Beau," Jessica called softly, rising from her protective position. "Don't. He's not worth it." Their eyes met across the room, and something passed between them, an understanding, a promise of something beyond this moment of violence and fear. Beau nodded slightly, then brought the butt of his gun down on John's temple, rendering him unconscious. "Tie him up," he instructed Liam. "The Marshals can sort him out when they arrive." Outside, the shooting had stopped. Thomas Montgomery and his men had successfully subdued Winter's hired guns with minimal bloodshed, taking control of the ranch. The local doctor was summoned to attend to James Collins, confirming Jessica's suspicions that he had been systematically drugged into dependency. With proper care and time to recover, he should regain his strength, the doctor assured her as dawn broke over the ranch. "But it will be a long road, Miss Collins." "We have time," she replied, glancing at Beau, who stood by the window, his profile outlined by the rising sun. "All the time we need." In the days that followed, Marshal Donovan and his men arrived to take John Winters and his accomplices into custody. The evidence against them was overwhelming, not just for the attempted murder of Jessica and the drugging of her father, but for a string of cattle-rustling operations stretching back years. "You'll testify at the trial." Donovan asked Beau as the prisoners were being loaded into a wagon for transport. "Yes, sir," Beau confirmed, "but I have some matters to attend to here first." The marshal's gaze shifted to Jessica, who was helping her father take a short walk in the garden, supporting his still unsteady steps. "I see," he said with a knowing smile. "Take all the time you need, Evans. You've earned it." As spring turned to summer, James Collins gradually regained his health under his daughter's devoted care. The ranch flourished once more, with Thomas Montgomery lending experienced hands until new, trustworthy workers could be hired. And through it all, Beau remained, first as a guest, then as the ranch foreman, and increasingly as something more to Jessica. They would often ride together in the evenings, exploring the boundaries of Collins' land, talking about everything and nothing. Jessica found herself sharing hopes and dreams she'd never voiced aloud, while Beau slowly revealed his own past the loss of his parents to fever when he was 16. His years as a marshal tracking outlaws across the frontier, his growing weariness with violence and death. "What will you do when the trial is over?" Jessica asked one evening as they sat beside a small creek, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. "Will you return to being a marshal?" Beau was silent for a long moment, skimming a stone across the water's surface. "I don't think so," he finally answered. "I've seen enough of that life." "What would you like to do instead?" she prompted, her heart beating faster. He turned to look at her, his blue eyes reflecting the golden light of sunset. "I was thinking I might try my hand at ranching." "If I found the right partner." Jessica's breath caught as he reached for her hand, his calloused fingers entwining with hers. "The day I found you in that creek bed," he continued, his voice deepening with emotion, "I told you that you were mine. I meant to protect, of course, but even then, something inside me knew you were meant to be in my life." "I felt it too," Jessica admitted softly. "Even through my fear and confusion, there was something about you that felt like home." Beau lifted their joined hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. I know it hasn't been long, and you've been through more than anyone should have to endure. If you need time, I don't," Jessica interrupted, surprising herself with her certainty. Life is too precious and too unpredictable to waste time when your heart knows what it wants. The smile that broke across Beau's face was like sunrise after the darkest night. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. Instead, Jessica closed the distance between them, their lips meeting in a kiss that felt like a promise, like coming home after a long journey. When they finally parted, breathless and smiling, Beau rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Jessica Collins. I think I've loved you since the moment I lifted you from that creek bed. And I love you, Beau Evans," she whispered back. "My rescuer, my partner, my future." They were married that autumn, with James Collins proudly walking his daughter down the aisle and the Montgomerys beaming from the front row of the small church. Unlike her first wedding, this one was filled with genuine joy and celebration, the entire community turning out to wish them well. "You look beautiful," Beau murmured as they shared their first dance as husband and wife. Jessica smiled up at him, radiant in a simple ivory gown that bore no resemblance to the elaborate satin contraption of her previous ill-fated marriage. "And you look very handsome, Mr. Evans." "I still can't believe you're my wife," he said, his arms tightening around her waist. "Sometimes I think I'll wake up and find it was all a dream." "Not a dream," Jessica assured him, rising on tiptoe to kiss him softly. "Just the beginning of our story." As the seasons passed, Willow Creek Ranch thrived under their joint stewardship. James Collins, restored to health, delighted in teaching his son-in-law the finer points of cattle ranching, while Jessica expanded the operation to include breeding horses, a venture that quickly gained reputation throughout the territory. The following spring brought their greatest joy, yet the birth of their first child, a daughter with her father's blue eyes and her mother's determined spirit. As Beau held his newborn daughter in the same bedroom where, not 2 years earlier, he had confronted John Winters, the journey from that desperate day to this blessed one seemed nothing short of miraculous. "She's perfect," he whispered, sitting carefully beside Jessica on the bed. "Just like her mother," Jessica smiled tiredly, reaching out to touch her daughter's tiny hand. "What shall we name her? How about Hope?" Beau suggested. "Because that's what you gave me when I thought my life would always be hunting down men like Winters." "Hope," Jessica repeated, testing the name. "Hope Evans, I love it." As dusk fell over Willow Creek Ranch, the little family remained together in the warm sanctuary of their home, the struggles of the past transformed into the foundation for their future. Outside, the creek that had once been the site of treachery now flowed peacefully under the stars, its banks blooming with wildflowers, a reminder that even from the driest, most barren places, new life could emerge when nurtured by love and courage. And sometimes, Jessica reflected as she watched her husband cradle their daughter, the most beautiful beginnings could arise from what seemed like the most disastrous endings. From the moment Beau had lifted her from that dry creek bed and declared, "You're mine," their destinies had been intertwined not by the cruel machinations of men like John Winters, but by the mysterious workings of fate and the choices of their own hearts. "I love you," she whispered to her husband and daughter, gratitude filling her heart for second chances and unexpected rescues, for the courage to begin again, and for the love that had transformed a day of betrayal into the first chapter of their extraordinary life together.